What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here. Back again talking college basketball. It is Tuesday, March the 18th. Mercifully, we have Monday behind us with no games. And today, we have playing games for the NCAA tournament. We have NIT games tipping off. This video, we're going to talk about the two NCAA tournament playing games and a couple NIT games that show value. Wanted to do the big betting first round all in one video, but it just didn't make sense. What would I do with Ole Miss having to play the winner of North Carolina, San Diego State? Would that be a standalone video then? As you can see, it just didn't make sense for me to do that all in one and then have to do those separately. So we're going to do those videos as soon as the results come in for the playing games, likely do one for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday individually. And we'll talk about the NIT, CBI, Crown, and stuff on days where we have few NCAA tournament games or none like today. Before we get started, I want to thank anyone who's liked, subscribed, left a comment. All that just helps a ton. It's a very small channel I have going on right here, trying to get it to 1,000 subs. We're close to 700, actually, so a little over 300 away from that mark. If you want to support, that's the best way to do so. And it only takes a little bit of time, and it's free. So if you want to help out, I appreciate you. That's the best way. Let's start with these playing games. St. Francis takes on Alabama State. In the 16v16 matchup, St. Francis is a 4.5 point underdog in some spots. The total is 139.5. No major injuries. St. Francis lost Ace Talbert very early in the season. Alabama State's coming in with a clean bill of health. These are the two worst teams in the field based on current power ratings. St. Francis is 311th. Alabama State is 273rd. This should come as no surprise to anyone, really, with the winner of this game going on to face the number 1 overall seed, Auburn. Resume-wise, St. Francis went 1-9 in the top 200. Their best win came over, actually, Central Connecticut, who should have won this conference, who finished 183 in total power rankings with an elite defense. But St. Francis somehow got it done in the greasiest game I've ever seen. Neither team scored 50 points. But anyway, that's all they've got. They have 5 losses outside the top 200. The worst one, Wagner, at 344. They dropped that game twice in the regular season. And the only decent team they even played competitively with outside of Central Connecticut was Radford. They lost by 9 points. Alabama State's body of work is not a whole lot better. They're 2-7 against the top 200. They did beat Omaha, who's in the field, which is noteworthy. This is Alabama State ranks 273 in power ratings. It's not like they're a whole lot ahead of St. Francis. But this team, they have quite a few losses outside the top 300. They lost to Grambling State at 319. They have 3 overall here. And I guess the most impressive game they played this year against good competition is they hung kind of close to LSU. They lost by 13. But overall, it's a pretty questionable body of work for both teams. That's what you get on the 16 line with the number 1 overall team on deck. As far as stylistics, Alabama State, 224th in effective height, 309th in rebounding. St. Francis is equally as bad, 343 in effective height, 279th in rebounding. So neither team tall, neither team rebounds. And St. Francis kind of shoots. They're 134th in effective field goal percentage, 115th inside, 195th from 3. Neither team is good on defense. Alabama State certainly not. They're 255 overall. 173 inside, 162 in the perimeter. So I guess there should be avenues for St. Francis if they can find a way to shoot the ball in this game. You just look at the way their team is comprised. They do have a couple decent shooters. Riley Parker, their point guard, is at 39% from 3. Juan Crawford, their shooting guard, is at 38% from 3. He's 6'3", so they're not tall, but they do have a couple shooters at the very least. And I'm not sure we can really say a whole lot about Alabama State shooting the ball. This team is 321 in effective field goal, 218th from 3, 338th from 2. Now, they're also not facing a good defense. St. Francis is even worse than Alabama State, 289th in total defense, 278th inside, 87th on the perimeter. If you look at just the shooters on Alabama State, I mean, we're pretty much reliant on CJ Hines at 37.7%. Otherwise, we kind of just need rebounds, second chance opportunities. it's not the best stylistic matchup for either offense. And I think that's just because neither offense is very good. Neither defense is either, so that should be noteworthy as well. But when you look at some of the peripheral stats, turnover margin vastly favors Alabama State. They forced the 93rd most turnovers. St. Francis is 321 in turnovers committed. Pace is not great in this game. Since January 1st, Alabama State's 154, St. Francis is 181. So St. Francis is exactly the same as their season-long pace, but you do have Alabama State playing a little slower. My first inclination when this came out was under 141, which obviously that's not the lean now after hesitating. It's dropped to 139. But one thing that's happened is Alabama State's taken a lot of money in the market. And I think that makes sense just at first glance when you look at the talent, the resumes, the overall power ratings. But mathematically, we do make this inside the +4, and 4.5s are popping up too. So this is one we're probably going to take. And some of the best metrics in the entire game come from St. Francis shooting the ball largely inside. The main worry I have with that individually is Ubong Okan from Alabama State is 7'1", protects the rim. So they do have a tall center. It's not going to be easy for St. Francis to score inside, who, again, they're basically playing at a huge disadvantage down there. Valentino Pinedo, the East Carolina transfer, the center for St. Francis is only 6'8". So even that you could poke a hole in. But at the end of the day, some of the best metrics that you're going to find between either team come on the St. Francis side. Tons of questions with that conference. St. Francis, the champion of the NEC, is one of the worst conferences in the country. But that's where we'll lean. There's no incentive to play this right now with Alabama State taking a lot of money. This will be one we discuss in Discord and likely take closer to tip-off if it continues moving this direction. On Discord, briefly, we're projecting every game, sides, totals, player props for most games that are offered. Now we have quite the array of props. Even some of these games like St. Francis have been offered. It's not just the major schools. We'll have those as well. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, minutes, whatever you could possibly imagine. We have it projected. And March Madness tool where we projected every single game for the entire tournament. So if you're wondering what a spread for a future Kentucky-Illinois game might look like, or Duke-Auburn, we have all of it for you. The link is below. No long-term commitments. It's $10 for a week. This is a great opportunity to try that out. And a month if you'd like to get the whole tournament. That is $30. Link is below. Next up, San Diego State, North Carolina. This game has a 4.5-point spread in favor of North Carolina. The total in the game sits at 142, easily the best game of the day. Only injury, Magoon Guath for San Diego State. Their center is projected to return. He suited up, warmed up for their season finale in the conference tournament, but he didn't actually get on the floor and play a minute. Resume-wise, North Carolina is the 33rd overall team in terms of power rankings. They went 0-10 against the top 25. They have 2 top 50 wins all year. Those came against SMU at 47, and then the UCLA win, who ranks 27th. That's carrying a ton of weight. They also have 3 poor losses outside the top 50. They lost to Stanford at 82, Wake Forest at 71, and Pittsburgh at 61. That came in like a little mini stretch for them, and they've played well since then. More on that in a second. San Diego State, fewer opportunities against the actual top 25, but they did go 1-1 in those chances. They beat Houston in overtime. It's the best win by far between either of these teams. San Diego State has dropped quite a few games of late, though. They have 4 losses outside the top 50. They lost to UNLV twice, and that's how you see them drop all the way to 46th in power rankings. They do have some quality wins, though. This team beat UC San Diego. They beat Creighton, who are 2 other teams in the field. So it's not just that Houston win carrying a lot of weight. And then they did fine in conference. This is a middling conference overall that usually puts in 3 or 4 teams, which they did this year. On the height stuff with Magoon Guath, this is very important. He's 7 feet tall. And with him, San Diego State ranks 17th in effective height. They're still not very effective rebounding. They're 191st, which is a concern, especially because we've seen improvement from North Carolina in a lot of the height metrics. They're only 205th in effective height. They do come in 82nd in rebounding, so that projects to be a massive advantage for them in this contest. But then it's also gotten a little better. Van Allen Lubin and Jalen Withers have been playing more of late. These players are 6'8" and 6'9" on the interior. I have questions about them. journeyman transfers that have struggled at previous stops, but somehow against the weak ACC, these players have sort of emerged. Is San Diego State better than some of the weak ACC? I think that's the question when you talk about Van Allen Lubin and Jalen Withers. Shooting-wise, North Carolina is 53rd. They're the better shooting team in this game by a wide margin. That's effective field goal percentage. Inside, they're 49th. From three, they're 92nd. And believe it or not, a lot of that comes from some of the peripheral players. It's actually RJ Davis who's held them back for a lot of the year. Excuse me. He's played a little better of late, especially that second Duke game. He was on fire, so that brings his three-point shooting all the way up to 34.5%. Sorry, I have this tickle in my throat. The perils of doing a solo show. Outside of RJ Davis, actually some of their better shooting has come from Ian Jackson at 39.6%, Jalen Withers at 44%, a very small sample for Withers, take that with some context. Drake Paul at 37%. But it's not going to be easy facing San Diego State, especially with Magoon Gwath back. The length he provides at 7 feet, the rim protection he provides erases what you can do inside. And then the guards for San Diego State are just fine. And that puts this team at 14th in total defense, 8th inside, 19th on the perimeter. This is an elite defense. You're not scoring on them effectively. On the other side, the problem with San Diego State and what limits them is their offense. 182nd in effective field goal. This team is atrocious from inside the arc. 224th in three-point percentage. Basically, you're reliant on Nick Boyd shooting. 35% three-point shooter. BJ Davis comes in at 36%, but he's off the bench sometimes. And three-point attempts, not as high for him. So it is what it is. This team just is not a good shooting team overall. North Carolina is 65th in total defense. They are 162nd defending the three, so maybe there's some more avenues shooting the ball. But I just don't see it. It's not like the Mountain West is a particularly strong conference. And what you're getting from the defenses there, it just is what it is. San Diego State can't shoot. You're going to have to rely on getting to the rim. Magoon Gwath being back certainly helps there, but it's dicey. From there, turnover margin's about equal. San Diego State forces far more, but North Carolina's a lot better with it. For example, they're 54th in turnovers committed, an excellent mark. And that's San Diego State, that is. And they're 104th in turnovers forced. Conversely, North Carolina is like the exact opposite. So it's strength on strength, weakness on weakness. I don't see this being a big edge either direction. Fouls, it's kind of the same thing. San Diego State gets in a lot of foul trouble, but North Carolina doesn't force any. And then it's the exact opposite for North Carolina. So to round everything out, it's kind of strength on strength, weakness on weakness throughout the entire game. You have the taller team worse at rebounding. The better defensive team can't score. And that goes all the way through the entire game. If you just mathematically use the year-long sample for both teams, which includes the games like Houston for San Diego State, this comes in inside the 4.5. If you were to isolate this just for a recent play, you would get something closer to the actual spread in the game, which has me worried. San Diego State has limped into this part of their season, and North Carolina has surged. Whether you think that's level of competition or not, I tend to have some questions as well. And because of that, we'll play the San Diego State side. I did play a 4.5 originally and then immediately bought out of it, just expecting this to go in North Carolina's direction even a little further. I've seen some 5s pop. I've seen some 5.5s pop. My plan is just to take this up to tip off and play the best number possible with San Diego State. If you just use the full body of work, this game should not be a 4.5, 5-point spread. It's a dicey roll. It's a dice roll because of the way both these teams have played, but we're going to take a shot here and see what we get. Of course, if you or somebody knows a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. To the NIT, Wichita State takes on Oklahoma State. This game has a spread of 6.5 points, a 155 total. We're going to be talking about some underachieving teams. It just is what it is. You don't get to the NIT by achieving at a high rate. Neither of these teams is particularly tall. Wichita 213th in effective height, Oklahoma State 194th. Rebounding favors Wichita by a pretty wide margin. They're over 100 spots ahead of Oklahoma State in total rebounding. Wichita State comes in at 77, Oklahoma State of 180. Neither team can really score. You have Wichita at 280th in effective field goal, Oklahoma State at 295, which is surprising considering Oklahoma State comes in ahead in total offensive efficiency. More on that in a second. But Wichita State is better scoring at the rim. They're 216th. And that's a huge advantage for them because Oklahoma State is 314th defending the inside. Oklahoma State's best strength is defending the three, where Wichita State just doesn't shoot threes. They're 356th in three-point rate. So offensively, I think there are paths for Wichita State to score. Oklahoma State is not a strong team whatsoever scoring the ball. They're actually better shooting the three, but that's a decent strength for Wichita State defensively. When you just dive into these two teams on defense, Oklahoma State does have a slight advantage, but again, they're very weak inside. Wichita State is 119th in total defense. This has room for improvement. Ronnie DeGray missed 12 games this year. Wichita State has played without their full starting lineup for most of the season. Everyone's back of late, and since that's happened, I think we're getting them a little underrated in the markets. They've basically been a covering machine and taking money very early on in the day now that people have realized this team is healthy and a little bit better with DeGray and Hill and Cortez and all their transfers that are now healthy. But Wichita State is actually 133 in two-point defense and 141 in three-point defense. So that's 233 on the interior, 141 on the perimeter. This matches up very well against Oklahoma State. And the reason you see their defensive numbers trail a little bit is they don't force turnovers. Well, lucky for them, Oklahoma State will give you turnovers regardless. They're 301 in turnovers committed. And then conversely, Oklahoma State's defense is bolstered by their 29th turnovers forced ranking, but Wichita State doesn't turn the ball over on the other side. So this is a matchup that's sort of just tailor-made for Wichita State. They don't turn the ball over, which neutralizes Oklahoma State's biggest strength. They're better in the half court defending the two and the three, the better shooting team overall, which is crazy given the metrics you see on the screen that actually appeared to favor Oklahoma State, not to mention their advantage on the boards. Only concern I really have is level of competition. We didn't talk about resumes. Oklahoma State's worst loss is FAU at 115. That's their only loss outside the top 100. For a team as bad as Oklahoma State, that's actually not bad. But when you look at their overall body of work, they went 1-9 against the top 50. They only beat Iowa State without Keyshawn Gilbert. Their next highest win is to Cincinnati at 55. It's still a very questionable body of work. Wichita State does have some questions as well. But again, a lot of these games they lost at less than full strength. They went 3-5 against the top 100. They beat Minnesota, Kansas State, and Memphis. So they do have some high-end wins. They also lost to Florida by 37 just for fun. They have some bad losses too. They have 3 outside the top 200, Tulsa twice, Kansas City. But again, health was a question for them all year. We played Wichita State plus the 6.5. We make this close to that number in the market. But again, you always have the health that you can fall back on and adjust for, making Wichita State an even better value. To close it out, we'll stick in the NIT where we have St. Louis taking on Arkansas State. 153.5 total, 5-point spread in favor of Arkansas State. Couple depth injuries on St. Louis, Kellen Thames, Larry Hughes, nothing on Arkansas State. Resume-wise, St. Louis went 2-8 in the top 100 this year. They beat St. Joe's and VCU, but they lost outside the top 100 6 times, lost to Illinois State at 140. So this is kind of a very consistent but limited body of work. They're not really losing games that they should win or they shouldn't win. So, I mean, it's you beat who you're supposed to beat, you lose who you're supposed to lose to. That's how you get a consistent but limited St. Louis team. Arkansas State went 3-3 against the top 100. They beat Akron, Memphis, and Troy. They've lost outside the top 200 just once to Hofstra. And there's a couple angles in this game I want to talk about. The main one's the under, 153.5. First of all, pace is not working in your favor. Arkansas State is 55th in tempo since January 1. St. Louis is 155. Both of those numbers are up from the season-long pace you see on the screen. Arkansas State 61, St. Louis 185. So why are we considering an under in a spot like this where tempo is actually faster for both teams? Both teams excel on defense, at least compared to their offensive numbers. And I think it's a pretty bad stylistic matchup for both teams. Right away, St. Louis, they live at scoring at the rim. This is a Robbie Avila stat. They're 4th in 2-point percentage. Arkansas State is 15th in 2-point defense. They have one of the better interior defense in the Sun Belt. That matches up extremely well against St. Louis. And then on the other side, St. Louis can trail a little bit behind Arkansas State in total defensive metrics. For reference, Arkansas State 15 inside, St. Louis 57. Arkansas State 13th from 3, St. Louis 128th. However, Arkansas State just so much worse shooting the ball. They're 262 in effective field goal percentage. So they just run into some problems altogether because they can't shoot. And then other stats should be pretty neutral in this game. Rebounding is close between the two teams. It would be even closer if St. Louis attacked the glass offensively at all. They are a top 80 unit in defensive rebounding, which should neutralize Arkansas State's second chance opportunities and lead to longer possessions. Ideally, this is a tough one, but all of the underplay comes down to stylistics in the half-court, offense versus defense, not the pace. The pace is good. That is the biggest worry in the game by far. But perhaps St. Louis slows it. This team is dead last in bench minutes in the country. Part of that because of injuries. But that'll do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with a similar structure, talking the 2 play-in games and the NIT if it makes sense. Then at night, we should, maybe even in the morning, we'll have the first round betting video as soon as we get results from the play-in games today. Until then, good luck. We'll see you later.